It's spring cleaning season, and Closets by Design can help you stay organized with our custom-made closets, pantries, and more. From now until May 10th, listeners of this podcast can enjoy 40% off and free installation. Plus, get an additional 15% off on top of that, all with 12 months financing available. But hurry, this offer expires May 10th. Don't miss out on these amazing spring savings. Visit closetsbydesign.com today and save. That's closetsbydesign.com.
If you're thinking about going to nursing school but aren't sure how to get started, join us at Galen College of Nursing's upcoming open house. Here, you'll meet with friendly and helpful faculty, current students, and academic advisors who can help you get comfortable with admissions and enrollment. Plus, you'll tour our campus and learn all about Galen's personalized student support. RSVP now for our open house on Thursday, May 8th from 4 to 6 p.m. by visiting galencollege.edu/Gainesville.
It's spring cleaning season, and Closets by Design can help you stay organized with our custom-made closets, pantries, and more. From now until May 10th, listeners of this podcast can enjoy 40% off and free installation. Plus, get an additional 15% off on top of that, all with 12 months financing available. But hurry, this offer expires May 10th. Don't miss out on these amazing spring savings. Visit closetsbydesign.com today and save. That's closetsbydesign.com.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is Investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting if you reach out to me through my email, oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Otherwise, our show you can find on Spreaker.com. And if you go there and Google, look for Aaron Sheets, The Mystery of TWA 800, you'll find our guest today, Mr. Aaron Sheets. You can find him on Facebook, TWA Flight 800 Solved. Okay, and you can't get more definitive than that, right? And then also, too, he's got a channel on YouTube called Rob Chef, S-H-E-F. Mr. Aaron Sheets, are you there, sir?
Yes, I am, Ed. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, right. Welcome back to the show. Remind the audience, though, who is Aaron Sheets?
Well, I am former U.S. Navy. I was born and raised in California. I went to San Diego basic training down there. I served Midway Island. I was on board two United States aircraft carriers. My job was an aviation bosun's mate, which means I worked with aircraft handler, firefighter. I'm a graduate from the Naval Air Technical Training Center in Lakehurst, New Jersey, back in 1977. And I've since now made my roots here in Jacksonville, Florida. Beautiful weather today. And we're a Navy town, so I'm not too far from Mayport and NAS Jacksonville. And I'm just working on remodeling my house, and that's what I'm doing in my retirement.
Let me ask you this, man. You sent me, my God. We got back in contact with each other about 2 weeks ago. And you've sent me so much material. Why don't you write a book about this and just get it over with?
Well, that is in the works, Ed. What I have started with for the audience, they're invited to go to the Facebook, if you're on a Facebook account. I'm working on trying to get this also on other platforms, but I have 4 companion articles which describe in the details that other people have not heard before about what actually happened with this terrible crash, and the loss of life. 230 families were affected, and a lot of people also don't know that the National Transportation Safety Board was taken to federal court over this. When I do my talking on social media, people are not aware of this. Captain Ray Lahr was trying to get information from the National Transportation Safety Board on certain crash records. They were not helping him at all. This was something that Captain Lahr knew should have not been any problem, because he was a former NTSB investigator himself, having worked on 7 other crash investigations. and the NTSB did everything they could to shut down information. He wrote several letters to the FOIA officer and got a runaround. He wrote the general counsel, got a runaround, and essentially they said, well, you're going to have to take us to court. So Ray Lahr did, and it did not go very well for the National Transportation Safety Board. So
I'm shocked. A FOIA request winding up in court? That's shocking. But no, his litigation was basically just to enforce his FOIA request. I mean, we weren't seeking monetary damages or anything like that.
No, this wasn't for monetary damages or anything like this. What prompted his interest in this was that the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, had produced a video cartoon that they aired on the evening news. Now, what happened was on the night of the crash, people reporting that they saw streaks of light in the sky, okay, fast-moving, that they called either like flares or rockets or something like that in the sky, and then they saw this massive fuel air fireball, okay, and everything dropping to the ocean. So there was this idea, was this a terrorist missile or something? So the CIA, wanting to get away from the missile idea, they came up with this idea. Now, mind you, they came up with this idea.
TWA
on
did.
December 3rd. I'm sorry?
You're saying that TWA came up with this idea of the missile?
No, the CIA.
Oh, CIA.
Yes. They came up and they created a video cartoon, and they aired it. And what they were trying to say was that people saw the 747 after the center wing fuel tank exploded, continuing on in crippled flight. Well, here's the problem with that. This is December 31st of that year. How would the CIA know that anything happened to this aircraft or what happened to this aircraft, because the wreckage recovery was not finished yet? They haven't even began to assemble this aircraft to know what the cause was. So the CIA came up with this idea. They said, we're going to have the center tank explode. Then we're going to have the entire front end of this aircraft detach. And then the aft portion of the aircraft with the wings are going to zoom, climb, and fly on fire, and people are going to think that was a missile. That was their whole deception on this.
And your conclusion is that it wasn't a missile?
Oh, no, it was a missile. They were trying to cover up the fact that it was a missile. The whole point of their the CIA's video was to confuse people and say you didn't see a missile, you saw this aircraft.
Gotcha.
You were right, this aircraft's zoom climbing. Well, when Ray Lahr saw this and many other aircraft engineers saw this, they said, no way. So this is what prompted Ray Lahr's lawsuit, okay, where he said, how did you determine that after the aircraft has lost 40 tons worth and 75 feet of aircraft, that this aircraft was able to remain wings level, balanced, and continue to fly and climb? And they came back and they said, well, we have flight performance data that we got from Boeing, and it's proprietary. We can't release this to you. And so Lahr was writing more letters, and he said, look, Boeing has already released what the performance data would be for this aircraft with the loss of this 40 tons. They said it's like a teeter-totter. You know, you got one person on one side, one person on the other, and if the big kid jumps off, the other kid's going to hit the ground. So what this aircraft was going to do was going to drop tail down and fall out of the sky. He said, but people saw missile-like streaks before they saw a fireball. And the government's trying to say, no, you didn't see any missile streaks before. You just thought you did. So the whole thing was a charade to try to confuse people. And that was the whole purpose of his lawsuit, was to get these documentations on how they came to this conclusion. Now, there's a lot more involved in the lawsuit besides just the Zoom claim. There was also the question about how did the NTSB come up with this idea that the center wing tank, which was empty, was able to explode with such massive force enough to break the keel beam of this aircraft and destroy this aircraft. Now, the tank was empty. There was no kerosene in it. Okay, modern jet fuel is a grade of kerosene, and they were trying to state, and that's another point I wanted to bring up regarding a statement that was made about this explosion. So Lahr said, he told me, the kerosene it's not a flammable liquid. It's a combustible liquid. It has to be misted in order to ignite. And they went on from there saying, well, there's these air conditioner packs underneath the plane, and those air conditioner packs heated up this fuel tank, and then conveniently there was an electrical spark somewhere, and that ignited the fuel tank and blew the plane apart.
The single spark theory, right? They called it. Let me ask you this: you mentioned in this FOIA lawsuit, but what about the victims, the families of the estates and stuff like that? Were they suing Boeing and TWA as well? There must have been many lawsuits, right?
There were, because the mechanical theory was being put forward, and that's what prompted the CIA to come up with this idea. And how would they know December 31st of 1996 that's how the aircraft came apart and that's what happened? But, of course, they're not going to give any answers. They wanted to get something out there which was going to answer people saying we saw missile-like streaks. And they said, well, that was just
I know, but besides that, though, my question is, like Boeing is the defendant, and so is TWA the defendant for all these families. Are they are they trying to defend themselves, saying, oh, no, or did they take a dive on their sword saying, yeah, it was this convoluted single spark and all this kind of stuff?
Well, actually, Ed, on that, it was kind of 50-50. I know that sounds kind of difficult to say, but Boeing, after that CIA video was aired, Boeing put out a press release, and they said, though we provide, the basic aerodynamic information, we don't have any idea how the NTSB and CIA come up with this aircraft zoom climbing. He says, we don't know where they came up with that information. And that was part of the lawsuit. And the whole time, the NTSB and the CIA were trying to use every FOIA exemption they could. They were stalling and dragging their legs and everything else the whole time through this, and trying to avoid this information. So this is where this thing began to go in different directions about terrorism. Was it friendly fire and all? But Boeing did have to make a payout, and TWA, because the NTSB, that was their word. They said that there was no evidence of a bomb or missile, so they had to take some payments out to the family for mechanical issues.
It was very unusual, too. I remember watching this in real time, that they had put up the families in this hotel. Never before or since have I ever seen this, where they put up all the families in this hotel, free hotel rooms, free room service for like a month or 45. Do you have any facts on that, how long they were putting these families up?
That I had heard nothing of. I know families had gone up there in that area, but the only portion I was getting into was around 2000 when FOIA requests were being put out about how the NTSB came to their conclusions that it was a fuel tank explosion, and then what perked everybody's interest was that this 747 that allegedly blew apart because of just kerosene vapors was unable to continue to fly and climb downrange for 2.5 miles.
Have you had an opportunity with all your research to interview some of those families that had victims on the plane and their experience in the lawsuits and stuff? And maybe they have some kind of new information you don't know?
I haven't talked with any of the family members.
Gotcha.
I was only in communication with Ray Lahr. We've exchanged 3 or 4 letters maybe, but had plenty of emails during the whole time that I was writing my technical essays for him and sending them to him in postal mail, and then discussing matters on the emails. So he was very appreciative of all the work that I put together in the technical essays, and one of them that I put forward actually produced a little bit of fruit that I'm happy about. It has to do with a certain program, but that's for another element. But no, I just was with Ray Lahr, and Ray Lahr was in discussion with other aviation experts who were providing me with support. Ray Lahr said, if anybody can help me with this lawsuit, because I need all the information to try to pry this Zoom claim information out of the NTSB.
What was Ray Lahr's motivation in all this? What, does he have a dog in this fight?
He just wanted to prove that that this aircraft did not explode from jet fuel, but then second of all, that entire CIA video of this blown in half 747 continuing to fly on downrange, just like, a normal plane. And
and Ray Lahr, who's funding his efforts? How is he funding his efforts to do all this? It's not cheap suing FOIA.
That was just out of his pocket.
Really? Okay.
Everything I've done has been out of my pocket. He was a Navy pilot back in the 40s, and he became a United Airlines pilot. He was an NTSB investigator on several different cases. He has a civil engineering degree, and he was an ALPA representative.
But you would agree that yourself, because you're ex-Navy, and Ray Lahr being ex-Navy, that perhaps your motivations are patriotism, that you want to clear the Navy of any kind of a wrongdoing in this matter?
Well, even if I wasn't in the Navy, I would still be, working for, the truth in this matter. I mean, this is just public relations. This is just getting to the facts that
most people would rather attend a corporate team building workshop than search for auto and home insurance.
Go team, feel that synergy.
That's why the Zebra searches for you, comparing over 100 insurance companies to find savings no one else can. Compare today at thezebra.com.
Who's ready for the trust fall?
Too fast, Trevor, too fast!
Here at the Zebra, research shows people would rather teach their kids to drive than search for auto and home insurance.
I know what I'm doing, Mom.
Or attend a corporate team building workshop.
Go team, feel that synergy.
Or be regaled by Uncle Frank's conspiracy theories.
They're listening to us right now.
That's why the Zebra searches for you, comparing over 100 insurance companies to find savings no one else can. Compare today at thezebra.com. We do the searching, you do the saving.
Shh, they're here.
Most people would rather remove a nest of irate hornets than search for auto and home insurance. That's why the Zebra searches for you, comparing over 100 insurance companies to find savings no one else can. Compare today at thezebra.com. I think I'll wait inside.
This aircraft didn't explode by reasons of fuel tank and then that Zoom claim. That was the primary focus. Okay, now subsequent to that was coming the friendly fire.
Right.
Okay, when they were trying to state that.
But before we get to that, because I got that, that's my next question. Evidence that the Navy was not off. Because the question was, like my buddy that was at NYPD Harbor Aviation, all the guys that they heard some rumor about the Navy or National Guard ship was there, But before we get to that. Last time we talked about that fellow, too, that showed up that claimed he was Army Corps of Engineers and he had them build a special helipad. You remember I told you that story?
Right.
Did you look that up after we talked?
No, actually I didn't.
Because I found articles about it. And he was involved in another. That guy ran around doing that all the time. He was involved in other crazy hoaxes and stuff. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on from that. So now, the story I heard from the guys there, NYPD, right, was that it was a Navy, that possibly the Navy was it. But you have evidence that the Navy was not there off of Long Island that night?
Exactly. The whole thing, when I was doing all of my technical reports and essays and legal arguments and sending them to Ray Lahr, I was also sending them off to Mr. Jack Cashill, who was writing extensively on WorldNet Daily articles on TWA Flight 800. So I got in contact with Jack Cashill via emails. Now, as this thing developed and came to a close, when the court case was closed, and Ray Lahr got a favorable decision from the judge, I was still able to continue on, or anybody was able to continue on, as the judge himself said. He said, ferreting out the truth would be compelling indeed. See, because when, after 3 years and several months of Ray Lahr being in court, the judge, after hearing the testimony from many aviation professionals, even former Boeing aerodynamicists, their engineers, they came to the facts that no, this 747 did not or could not have exploded from vapors from an empty fuel tank. There's not the chemical energy to do that. It's just like when you put lighter fluid on your charcoal grill and toss the match on it. It's going to go poof. It's not going to go kapow and blow your grill apart. Okay, the chemical energy is not there. So, when push came to shove, he ended up getting a favorable decision. And the judge wrote, he said that, taken together, he said that he sees that the NTSB committed gross negligence in their handling of this case, and ordered the NTSB to release certain requested records. Now, we didn't get everything we wanted, but there was still enough that gave the government a big black eye, and they're still trying to apologize and still trying to deny, and even after a court ruling, they're still sticking to their guns.
Now, what about you and Ray Lahr in all this? Are Boeing or TWA, are they reaching out to you and saying, hey, can you share your information with us?
No, I haven't contacted Boeing or TWA. I was just following this along since 2000. The court case started around 2003, I believe, and was in court for a couple of years, 2003 to 2006. If my memory's right, I have to look at the paperwork. But
yeah.
But I was just contacting and supporting Ray Lahr during his FOIA suit, and we would get all the different documents. So I was pulling everything I could get. I have the entire case, all of the dockets, investigators' dockets. I even have the CIA packet, the CIA FOIAs. John Clark, who was Ray Lahr's attorney, he wanted to get them online, so he wrote me an email. He said, hey, Aaron, he says, I got, 600 to 800 pages of CIA documents. He says, do you want to take the task to get these ready for the internet? So he sent it to me. I came home from work, and there was a box on my front porch, and it was from John Clark, and I opened it up, and there's all these CIA documents, FOIA documents and stuff. So I scanned them in and sent them off for him to be able to use as he would be able to use on the internet. So I was privileged and honored to do that for him.
Yeah, if people want to look at the archives, I've interviewed both Cashel and John Clark about this topic too as well. Although maybe Clark wasn't about this, it might have been about something else. But do you recall if I interviewed Clark about TWA, or was it just Cashel?
Well, John Clark was his attorney. He was in Washington, D.C. Cash Ill has written extensive articles, though I believe I sent you a video with Jack Cashel talking about this. We don't see eye to eye on some things regarding the case, and I had given him some of my documents, in good faith, from my dispositions. I showed him some radar, and I also completed a new analysis on the flight data recorder. And most people don't know that the NTSB had deleted 25 seconds of data from the flight data recorder. They did that in order to cover the time for the Zoom climb. Now, this was the most extensive portion. This was even more detailed than doing the radar graphs with this flight data recorder. I had to go back from zero, scratch, and work all the way through. When you look at their tabular charts, it would have to give like a little crash course to the audience here on how the flight data recorder works. But it's essentially a matrix of numbers, and they overlap, and they're in blocks. and you have so many seconds of blocks for a super frame and a data frame and all this. And there's a way that you're able to validate whether the information is in order by these number sets. Well, just looking at the NTSB's tabular chart, right off the bat, they were out of sync. So that's what got me interested in this. And when I started digging into this, I saw how it was starting to fit together. I was like, they needed 20 seconds for the Zoom climb, so they took 20 seconds plus off the flight data recorder.
And who would do that? NTSB would do that?
The NTSB, the person, yes, sir.
Gotcha.
I have I have their total Exhibit 10 and their addendums. And when people were asking questions about this flight data recorder, they were telling them, how come you deleted this last line of data? Okay. Yeah. Well, that was a mistake when they omitted that last line of data. Okay, that got my wheels turning, because when I started looking at the pattern, first off, I noticed that they didn't put the parameter numbers in correct order. Okay, now for your audience, a parameter number it means, like, for a flight data recorder, the recorder is recording the aircraft speed, its altitude, yaw, pitch, flap settings, heading, roll, pitch, yaw, and all of this. And it's getting recorded onto the recording tape. Now, there's only a certain way that these numbers can go in on the machine. It's designed a certain way. Well, the NTSB, not thinking that anybody was going to take a big look at this, kind of rearranged things. Now, I looked at this, and again, that piqued my interest on this. So when I started digging into it, I found out that last row of numbers, they were trying to say, well, that's just garbage because it was from another flight. Well, again, this gets up in another technical area, but it could not have been from another flight. Those numbers on the last second of data was from TWA Flight 800, and that's why I invite anybody to read my FDR report that I have posted on Facebook.
Yeah, and once again, that's a TWA Flight 800 solved on Facebook by Aaron Sheets.
Right, yes.
Now, real quick, I did interview Clark and I did interview Cashel about this, right? Now, what is differing? You said you disagree with them. What is different from your conclusion as theirs?
Okay, Jack Cashel, again, I had sent him in good faith. He had asked to see some of my work when I had addressed to him about the flight data recorder.
Right.
He said, "Oh, that sounds very interesting." So I sent it off to him, and I sent off a few radar graphs. He never responded. I wrote back to him again on email, and he said, "Oh, I've just really been busy. I haven't had time." I waited a few more months. He still didn't get into it, and then since then I didn't hear nothing. He wants to insist that the U.S. Navy was out there.
Right.
Now, this portion only came up in the last few years when a gentleman by the name of, and I can say his name because he went online and produced his own records. His name is William H. Keel III. He states that he was on board the USS Carr and that he was out there with the USS Leyte Gulf out there in Warning 105 area, and that they were going to target a towed target, but they were only supposed to do so as a simulation. Now, in his story, he says somehow live missiles got fired. Well, I was in the Navy. That's impossible to do. You cannot accidentally fire off live missiles. The next problem with that is if these missiles did launch, they would have to had missed the towed target, and then they would have to have automatically reacquired TWA 800, which is well over 20 miles away, weave themselves all the way through all this different traffic and hit TWA.
Gotcha.
That's an impossibility because during any training missions, if a live warhead is launched toward a target vehicle or a towed target, if it misses the target within seconds, they're going to self-destruct. That's just the law. That's just the protocol. These missiles are not going to continue on and fly for miles and miles. and nobody on either ship, either the Carr or the Lady Gulf, alleged knew where these missiles were. I had emailed Mr. Teal and was asking him questions when he still had that page up, and I said, "Do you know where your ship was?" Well, he can't see where his ship was. He can't answer any questions about anything about this other than, that's just my story. And
well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you told me this story last time, but you weren't allowed to say the name Teal. Is that correct?
Well, Mr. Cascio, when he was writing his book in 2015, which he had published in 2016,
right.
Most people would rather attend a corporate team building workshop than search for auto and home insurance.
Go team, feel that synergy.
That's why the Zebra searches for you, comparing over 100 insurance companies to find savings no one else can. Compare today at thezebra.com.
Who's ready for the trust fall?
He writes in the book that he spoke to, and he didn't use the name. He had him anonymously. He said, I spoke to a Navy sailor who was on the car, and he says that they were out on exercises and fired off these missiles, and that they accidentally, went rogue, I guess. And that's a part of what this new lawsuit is about right now. It's kind of tightening up right now. I'm still trying to find updates on it, but some of the family members are now trying to go against, and this is through Tom Stalcup also, who worked on this. He has flight800.org, and he's also trying to state that it was the U.S. Navy, and they're taking all of this based on Teal's statements.
Gotcha.
Again, not a testimony because he hasn't done anything in court. So I had to be going online and telling people, look, none of this can happen. I don't know Teal's motivation, but I was in the Navy, and I know what he's saying is a bunch of, as we say in the Navy, yarn. It's a bunch of nonsense. So what I did was I wanted to find out some information about where some of these ships were.
Wait, before we get to that, you mentioned the new lawsuit. Who is the defendants in this new lawsuit?
This is from a family member. It's called Crick versus Raytheon.
Okay.
And quite a few, if you just type in Crick v. Raytheon, they've listed in there the Department of Defense, the Missile Defense Agency, the U.S. Navy, Raytheon, Lockheed. They're trying to state that this was wrongful death because of faulty missiles or something to do with the missile system.
And this would be like a second bite, because they must have received the settlement already from TWA and Boeing, and now they're going for a third bite, it would appear. Now going after Raytheon for a third bite?
Well, from the surface, that looks like double dipping to me. I don't know what family members specifically received anything in the first lawsuit, but this one, they have some specific family members. I think there's 15 people in there, and they're trying to go after Raytheon, but a lot of their attorneys are backing out of this thing.
Okay.
Now, I'm thinking, I wanted to interject at this point, is I sent 3 letters myself to the DOD's general counsel. This was a few years back.
Okay.
And I mentioned pretty much the same thing I mentioned to you. I told him, I says, I pulled up out of your own archives. Let me preface this. Congress was asking the Department of the Navy in 1999, because of the Navy missile theory, friendly fire, they said, can you please send us a list of ships and their locations on that night? Well, at the behest of the Secretary of the Navy and the General Counsel and the Navy Information Officer, what they did was they pulled up this list and they sent it off to the Congress as requested. Well, I got those through FOIA. I have those copies in my hand. And they state the name of the ships that were out there. There were only 5 missile ships, okay, out of the total of 12 or so ships, and there were submarines out there also. But they were 300.
Who would imagine there's that many battle machinery out off of Long Island, you know?
Well, this was actually 300 miles. Well, I just say south, but when you look at Long Island and you go down the coast, you're going southwest essentially.
Huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Huh. It's just incredible that we have that much artillery out
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
NATO, too, as well, we're going to be getting to. But to back up just a bit, though, back to Cashel. My experience with Cashel, okay, he's trying to blame Obama for Trayvon Martin, okay? This guy's got an agenda for every little thing he's doing out there. What would be his agenda for going after the Navy? Because who was president at the time? Probably Clinton, right? He was blaming Clinton for this? What's his motive, this guy, with this Navy stuff?
From what I read was he basically put forward his book because of the whistleblower. Now, what Castiel did was, I had mentioned before that I had John Clark. I had him. He had sent. We were discussing it, and he sent me the Navy packet. Or I beg your pardon, the CIA packet. Okay, and I went through all the documents. It took me about a week. I had to scan them all in, get them collated, and stuff like this to send them back to him on a thumb drive, where he could go through and put them online as he required. So, going through that list, Jack Castiel was able to go online, and he was able to pull up a few of those CIA documents. Well, when he's talking about this, he says, well, we were able to get these CIA documents. And I'm thinking, Jack, you didn't have anything to do with those documents. You only were able to mention those documents in your book because I got them prepared to get put online. So, so the fact that he wrote in his book, in the index, go look up this CIA document that's such and such a place, it looks like that, that he pulled this information up. Instead of saying, I received this information.
No, I got you with that, but my question is, he appears to be like a Republican, conservative, political operative, and because who's funding this guy? Where's he coming from? He's got all these agendas. So what would be his motive in this situation to blame it on the Navy?
Well, friendly fire and a missile. He was not aware, that we're going to get to here, that there were NATO ships out there, and this is because of the government's attempts to cover this up. Castiel, all due respect for the work he's done, but he didn't do his homework. And 99% of the other investigators didn't do their homework. So as I started to say, when I got all this stuff together, I was just going to give it to him, say, here, take this, run with it, and put it up there. My name shouldn't even have come up in this. I said, just get it out there. I'm just a caboose here. I'm just an investigator doing analysis. And they weren't interested because I wasn't saying what some of the other investigator friends of theirs were saying. So they thought, Aaron Sheets, he's a nut job. Let's ignore him. Okay. So.
When we play this, right? We'll play. I'll play the first interview we did that week, and I'll also play the Cashel interview and the Clark interview too. And people can make up their own mind who's nuts. I think the conclusion I'll come to is Ed Opperman is the nut in this group. Okay, but let's see what we get here. Let's get into the NATO Navy nearby.
Yeah. Well, on that, like I said, I have the documents. Where they were asking the questions about, can you give us a list of the ships that were out there?
Right.
And when I numbered the ships, there were 5 missile ships down there. The others were like LHDs and LPDs and, and other, non-missile ships.
Okay.
The first thing I think really that got the ball rolling on the Navy and that you brought that up for me was that the USS Normandy's on that list. Okay, now the USS Normandy being 300 miles away, that's the question you asked me on the last interview. You said, well, aren't there missiles that can go that far? Well, they were only trying to stick with the Navy did it because people were looking at the Normandy. So posts started going up on the internet about the Normandy being down there, and then that's where it got to the Navy friendly fire, in other words, just because the Normandy was out there. Well,
but you're saying that the Normandy was 300 miles away, and there had to be other air traffic between TWA 800 and the Normandy, right? That would have been hit first.
Oh, exactly. I mean,
300 miles is huge.
That's the vacates area, but they were working. Now, I wanted to bring up the point here on my bullet points, which I was looking out, is the rumor started, and once a rumor starts, people take something and they fly with it. Yeah. Okay? A Navy P-3 was transiting the area at the time of the crash, okay? My timeline is a little bit different than the other timelines, and the reason I bring that up is because of an excellent witness that was on an U.S. air flight that saw the entire event. When you're in an airplane looking out the window and you look down and you can see the whole entire event, he said, I thought I would have been an excellent witness, okay? So on this P-3, the P-3 is flying through the area. Now, when I pulled up the transcripts, the P-3 is talking to air traffic control, and they're talking about how we're going to be going down south to the Berg intersection to work and go operational down there. There's nothing about them working in Long Island area in any kind of exercise up there. People just took the idea that a P-3 was there, so they invented this story. Well, the P-3 was monitoring this missile thing, and so they start writing books about it. The P-3 was flying through, so Navy ships had to have been down there, and that's part of the P-3 story.
Well, let me ask you this, because you mentioned here that the radio transcript, they have transcripts of their radio communications. They take that down?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I got those. They're part of public record. It's in the NTSB's exhibits exactly.
Huh.
And I pulled all those up, and I even have the radio, the audio on several of these. And they're talking about wanting to get this P-3 down south to the operational area. Then in another portion of the transcript, the P-3 is flying through, and he says, ma'am, we have a request. And she says, what's your request? He says, well, we have 105 is cold. Okay, and when they say cold, that's opposite of hot, okay, which means you're either active or not active. Okay, so a hot warning area means it's active. You're going to have exercises going on in it, okay? Now, what's funny about this, I mean, not funny, but kind of ridiculous, I had asked Mr. Teal, I said, tell me about this 105. Was it hot out there that night? And he writes back, and he thinks I'm talking about the weather. He goes, well, no, I don't think it was really that hot. It was toward the evening and everything. I thought, oh, my gosh. So that kind of, toward the credibility.
Well, has anybody confirmed that William H. Teal III is actually ex-Navy and was on that ship?
Well, at my point, I don't care of even looking that up.
Okay.
All I need to know is that I have the documents from the Navy Department and from the General Counsel through FOIA of what Navy ships were operational, and that they were well down south. And then that gets into the next point. Okay, well, what ships were in the area and where were they? And exactly what transpired. So that's the main point I wanted to get to on this, was what actually happened that night.
Okay, shoot. I won't interrupt. I promise. Go ahead. This is the part about the NATO ship, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, when you look at the graphs that the NTSB puts out there, what they did was the NTSB. Now, I know this is going to sound difficult, but the NTSB on paper, they moved the crash site.
All right.
Okay. They say that this aircraft went down 8 nautical miles off the coast. It actually went down a little bit further to the south, okay? I have this by radar records. I also have this by radio transcripts. Again, no other investigators dug into this. I would be the only one to have dug into this and try to get this information out there. TWA, when it was flying, was skirting, okay, I gave you that map. I showed you that map to kind of give you your insight. Now, if people can visualize Long Island in your head, okay, and then you're going to go out about 12 miles or so, and they're imaginary lines. They're not. It's a warning area. It's an area you can see on a map. So when you're flying over this area, TWA was just inside the area, which is about 12 to 14 miles off the coast, which is known as 106B. W106B. It was heading east. Okay, then it began to turn a little bit and was on an 80-degree heading. Now, it was at that point when this supersonic AV, it's a target missile, was heading out from overshore. Now, one witness nailed it and described this thing to a T, stating that this object looked like a small plane, a commuter plane, but it had stubby wings. She wrote this out as much detail as she could to the FBI when she was giving her witness statement. She called it a missile thingy. She said, very unusual. She said it looked like a plane, but it didn't look like a plane. And then she said it looked like, from the side profile, like a shiny new dime, okay? And I had gotten those pictures of a target vehicle in flight. And then she wrote back and she stated later, she said, well, what I didn't mention before is it had like a Bunsen burner effect on the end. That describes to a T a aerial vehicle, all right? And also the fact that people said, well, we heard these boom, boom, boom sounds. Well, the CIA is trying to do this. Well, that's just sound propagation. And, and I'm saying, so you're telling me from 12 miles away, people heard a fuel air vapor explosion loud enough to shake a bridge? No. Those were sonic booms from these missiles going through. And when you got the atmosphere just right, you're going to get a good sonic boom. I was in my house here, and something had occurred in the area. I had called a number regarding public information, and they said, oh, that's just sonic booms in the area that I heard that shook my house. So when this AV was flying to the area, she said it went out and then it turned. Now, when I looked up these aerial vehicles, they're able to go up, down, left, right, do whatever. These target missiles, okay? So this target missile turned. She went out and said it had like a Bunsen burner effect on it. It was going very fast. It went out. It made a hard left turn, went out to sea, went out toward the horizon, and the next thing I know, I just see this like poof, this like fireball effect, okay? Well, what happened was that AV had impacted the 747 Flight 800 at the left wing root. Now, this is exactly what the machinists report, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, put in the report. But the safety board, the board members, 5 members, did not want to include that. They wanted to make it a mechanical because they have to have a safety reason. How do you make safe tanks? Even if a missile hit your plane, as long as you have a safer tank, you might not blow up the fuel. I know that sounds absurd, but that was their thinking. So this AV had impacted the plane. Now, it was supposed to have been targeted by one of these 2 NATO ships, okay? There was a NATO ship to the south of TWA, and there was one to the east. Now, the missile that Brumley saw, now he was on U.S. Air 217. He's heading north going into Long Island. He says he looks out his window, and he sees this missile coming up, arcing over, heading toward the north, bypassing his plane, then making a hard right turn, and then he sees the fireball and everything go down, okay? Now, when you put yourself on the beach, the Air National Guard said, we saw a missile coming from the east heading west back toward TWA, okay? And they said this thing was driving at a hard speed, and he says, and then around the same time also we saw this fireball occur. So there's 2 missiles involved. Now, the reason I was able to find these 2 ships is because the NTSB, they had a very tight little circle of ships of concern that they were going to put on their graph that they say were close to TWA itself. But this was according to their crash location, not the actual crash location.
Let me ask you this, as far as crash location, have you considered requesting information from NYPD, Harbor Aviation, the Coast Guard, and I'm sure the fire department too? They have divers too as well that probably were out there. Have you gone to them and requested crash location recovery sites? I'm sure they would have it.
The crash location, well, actually, again, that's with the way the NTSB worked this, which is, again, for another element. But the information that I received, that I pulled up, Ed, was from the radio transcripts.
Right.
You have aircraft flying in the area, okay? And I pulled up their transcripts. So you have real-time radio. We have Flight 507. The the NTSB has Flight 507 over Long Island near the coast, but heading basically westerly. Okay, where the aircraft really was, according to the transcripts and the radio, and you can hear it on the radio, was they were already in the turn with their nose pointing to the southwest. So they were pointing toward TWA, okay? And then you have a Piedmont flight that was west of TWA. He was flying. Now, when he got to his location and called it in, he says, we have fire in the water at our 2 o'clock position. Well, if you go with the NTSB's crash location, that would have been at his 12 o'clock position, not his 2 o'clock position. So what the NTSB did was they tweaked positions of aircraft to make it line up with their crash location.
Gotcha.
See how this is going here? Okay.
Yeah.
So then we have the Air National Guard. Okay. He's leaving the end of runway 240. Now, he's on the Gabreski Tower, Suffolk Gabreski Tower radar. This is where the Air National Guard was.
Air National Guard.
Right. The ANG, Air National Guard. They have to do training flights every so often to keep their reservists current.
Gotcha.
So, and this was Major Myers, and he wrote up his whole affidavit. He said, we were on a heading of 180. Now, this is magnetic. You fly magnetic, not true in a helicopter, okay? The dum-dums at the NTSB, they marked it on the chart as 180 true. Okay, that's for another time. So he was flying out, and the Gabreski radar was talking to ATC, and it says, yeah, we have him on radar right now. He's at 15 miles out. Well, that's 4 miles or so past the NTSB's crash site. Okay? Then, when the ATC called, the air traffic controller called the Coast Guard, ADAC, he said, we have this 747 down, and they said the approximate location is 16 nautical miles south-southeast of Mauritius. Okay? That's down well past. So you have all these points of references that show where the real crash location was, and how the NTSB wanted to move it, because once you start moving where people were actually looking to where they say people were looking, then they can say, well, see how your testimony is wrong because you're looking in the wrong area. See, they're trying to confuse things by saying, well, there's the crash site, so you couldn't have been looking there. See what I'm saying is?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were actually looking at the actual crash site at 16 nautical miles out, and inside this warning area, right on the cusp of it. And the helicopter flew out. He was at the 15 miles on radar. Then you have the 507. Now, on his radio transmissions, he was coming down the V-139 airway. Now, I did a time-speed analysis on this, about his airspeed and his time between radio transmissions. When he's coming down, TWA would have been right underneath him, according to the NTSB's crash site. But when he's flying along, he says, yeah, I'm giving you further updates. I got this crash site, he says, at about 5 miles at my 11 o'clock. Well, when you look on that map, you can see that that as he's coming down, it would be more toward, because he's looking down over the edge of his, window there. And he says about 11 o'clock is where this aircraft was. Okay, that nowhere. So that doesn't line up. So you can take hundreds of pieces of information from all these different sources and show that the NTSB just totally ruined this thing. They just lied and just wrote up their own report to cover. So now getting toward the NATO ships. On this portion, I had received an older FOIA article that I was reading about, and it talked about in July, in that area in July and August, how 4 foreign ships were going to be out in the area. Okay, well, they didn't know what these 4 foreign ships were. So as I started digging into this further and was able to then look on the map at where TWA really was, I could then line up Mr. Brumley's location when he was on 217 and locate a ship, and then which is where he saw a missile come from, and then to the east of where TWA was, which is not on the NTSB's graph, there's a surface track. Now the report says I'll pull it up here and read it verbatim. It says 4 mystery radar targets believed to be ships were within 6 miles of the crash site at the moment TWA exploded. The NTSB does not know their identities, and the FBI's Flight 800 spokesman said he did not know about the ships or the extent to which they were investigated. The 4 mystery vessels were spotted by shore radar units. None is detected responding to the Flight 800 disaster. Okay. Well, the FBI says, we unturned every rock and stone and we named every ship out there. But when you look on the NTSB's exhibits, they list the names of some ships in the area or types of ships, except for one, and that's the so-called Mystery 30 knot track that they have leaving the crash site. But this is the NTSB's crash site. See what I'm saying?
Gotcha. Right.
Okay. See how they're trying to totally convolute this. So when the NTSB drew a 10 nautical mile circle and they said, well, we're only concerned about these ships within 10 nautical miles, you had 3 other ships outside of that 10 nautical miles, but which were actually closer to the real crash site several miles to the south.
And which were those ships? That's the German ship and the Canadian ship you wrote in these notes here?
Right. I have the name of those 4 ships, actually. They were part of this FOIA article that I pulled up, and they were to be on they were supposed to have showed up on July 22nd. Okay, now I don't know whether that port visit happened or anything at that time. I've been digging in, and I was really lucky, Ed, to even find that video I sent you that kind of confirmed the fact that NATO did go to Norfolk. Because every time you look up NATO ships working with the U.S., it's always way over near UK and all that. So that night they knew what happened. They knew that that AV, whatever they were doing out there, that this AV was supposed to have been targeted by these 2 NATO ships. But unfortunately, TWA, due to a miscalculation somewhere, was impacted by that AV and took the plane down. So
wait,
the article goes on.
You're saying that they knew that they would be doing practice missile shots out there?
This was the whole portion of their secret exercise, but they were trying to pin that on the Navy.
Gotcha. I know.
Okay.
But then what are they aiming at then? When they're doing these practice missile shots, what are they aiming at? They have to hit something, right?
They were supposed to hit this target AV that was flying from it came from over land. Now, it could have been launched from land or it could have been dropped from an aircraft.
Right.
But that's the one that the witness saw that took off, that went across. It was at a low altitude. Now, these missile shoots, I looked this up, can go anywhere from 6,000 feet up to 50,000 feet. But this one happened to be at 15,000 feet, the same altitude that TWA was at. Okay? When by a miscalculation, that AV impacted 800. Now, this is the other point. Let me finish reading this up here real quick. It says, an Atlantic Fleet Watch officer was told about 24 hours after the crash to keep the names, okay, so these ships were named, not just a ship.
Yeah.
The names of these 3 ships, okay, in-house for the time being. Okay, the identities of those ships still had not been released. Now, this was at the time of this FOIA article, okay? Now, 3 of those ships are the 3 that are on the map. They're not on the map I gave you, but the one ship is the one that's just a little bit to the southwest of the NTSB's crash site. That's the one they were trying to say was a Navy ship. Maybe it was trying to escape. That went into the narrative for the Navy Did It theme. Okay, but that was a NATO ship, all right, and that's one of the 4. And it says that 4 foreign ships were to visit Norfolk on the 22nd, and those ships were a British ship, Campbelltown, a Dutch Navy ship, the Blois van Treslong, a German Navy ship, the Bremen, and a Canadian Navy ship to Charlottetown. Okay, and those were the same ones that were supposed to be on this port visit within a few days of this crash. And given that it says that there were 4 mystery targets, and then it talks about how 4 foreign navies were supposed to work with our navies, it just goes to reason. It could not be anything else but those 4 ships, and that's why they wanted to keep them quiet. And that's why the NTSB tweaked the crash location to where only 1 ship would be in the location. Now, the FBI came along and they said, oh, well, we don't believe that's a military ship. That was their quote. They didn't say we don't believe that's a U.S. Navy ship. They said, I said, why would they say military ship and not U.S. Navy? And they said, well, based on the speed and the size, we just think it was like a cabin cruiser. And I said, no, it wasn't no cabin cruiser. You know. But
also, too, don't they know every ship that's that close to the American? Like, aren't they keeping track of this kind of stuff that's going on?
They do.
Yeah.
They do, but that's part of the cover-up, Ed. You know, like I'm saying, I know everything I've said here just sounds just unbelievable. But this is everything nobody else has ever heard.
Well, let me ask you a couple questions. Now, you sent me a bunch of stuff, some maps and articles and videos. Would it be okay if I put that up on the Patreon along with the interview so then people can review it as they're listening to the interview?
Absolutely.
No problem. What about the articles, too?
You're welcome to anything I sent you.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay. You know, I wanted to, I don't know how we are on time here.
Well, if you want to do your 7 minutes thing, I would have one more question, then I'll let you go.
Okay.
One more question is this. Boeing took a hit on this, and TWA took a hit on this. Now, if there's any chance of some other culprit in this, they would want to compensate their damages. Who would then compensate Boeing to keep quiet and compensate TWA to keep quiet over this? CIA?
This is all political because Boeing depends on government contracts, and it goes far more politically deep and people in the business and people in politics and stuff than that's kind of outside of my wheelhouse. But Boeing did make that statement about the video. They said, we don't know how CIA came up with their Zoom climb because we already gave the information that if this aircraft blew in half like it did.
Right, but that was early on before litigation started, right? That's before anybody was served.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what about since then?
I wanted to get to...
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. You want to get something?
Yeah. That on the flight data recorder, see, they have the flight ending at 8:31 and 12 seconds. Okay, they say that's when the flight exploded and the recorders were cut. Well, that's not true. The flight continued on, was heading up to its last command to go to 19,000 feet, but to expedite to 15,000 feet. That's validated by the flight strips from the ATC as one source. Plus, since there was no center wing tank explosion, because that never happened, because kerosene doesn't blow up, and because the front of the aircraft didn't come off, that's also on radar. The NTSB has the front of this plane coming off and dropping off by itself. Now, the late Commander Bill Donaldson, who's working on this at TWA800.com, he said in his early radar work, which I pulled up, as I was doing this, said this front end's not on radar. So this is what happened. The plane is flying along. Okay, it gets hit by, and this is at 20 seconds later, at 8:31 and 32 seconds. At that time, the AV impacts the left wing root. This gets the plane to roll to the right and begin to invert and change direction and kind of spin to the south. This is on the flight data recorder. This is what the NTSB took out, because how are they going to explain that? Okay, so they had to delete that. I was able to go back in and put all that back in with my new analysis. So the plane rolled over. It started to head down. At that time, about 3 to 4 seconds into that rollover, that's when the left wing began to detach, and that's when the front end began to detach. So you're having the entire aircraft fall together in one fall corridor. That's why you don't have the front end of the plane falling off in one direction, and then the aft section of the plane on radar 2 miles down the range. That never happened. That's just the CIA's fantasy, okay, to cover up for the missile sightings. So the plane rolls over, and then one of the missiles, okay, which was the one that passed Brumley from the coming from the south to the north, that he saw pass his plane, that hit the left wing. Okay, that's full of fuel. That was the point that the wing was detaching. Okay, and when the missile was supposed to be targeting this AZ at that point, that missile hit that wing, and that's what was that massive fuel air fireball that everybody saw. And then everything was streaming down from that point. So you don't have this, and then the recorder records that up to time 8, 31, and 38 seconds. Okay, so it did actually put in that very last line of data that I told you about that was in the NTSB's report that they then lined out. That was the very last, but 25 seconds later. Are you following me on that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So they did take the last line of data, but then when people were asking about that, they said, no, that was just garbage data and stuff like this. When I started looking into it, and just go on in, Ed, and just read my FDR report, and you'll see how this works. I mean, that's the only way. You got to read the book.
Yeah, and you can. I hate when guys say that, but you can go to Facebook for free. TWA Flight 800 Solved, and then also to what kind of content do you have on the YouTube channel, the Rob Chef SHEF YouTube channel?
I have 2 homemade videos I made.
Okay.
One's like an hour and 12 minutes, and then I have a shorter Reader's Digest version of the same thing where I just sit down and discuss. And it helps people kind of get a feel for, it's kind of like a preamble to the work that I finished up here. But with everything I've had taken together, I am 100% certain that from these FOIA documents about these NATO ships being there, the radar data that there's 4 ships, happen to be 4 ships that the government did not want to mention that. But now here's the final piece that the last 7 minutes I wanted to read off to you, which is going to put the cherry on top of this thing.
Okay, and before we get to that, I got 2 questions for you. Have there been any other whistleblowers come forward? Because if the ship that fired this missile, there must be sailors on that ship that they feel safe, they're all down, and they want to talk. No one's come forward?
This would be NATO. And the whole reason for trying to say it was either U.S. Navy
right.
or go along with that friendly fire, but then say, well, there was no friendly fire, was just for the very fact, because when you had that P-3 out there flying and the Coast Guard out there, see, the P-3 turned back around. After it flew past and it heard about this crash, it turned back around and went back. So there's no U.S. Navy running from a crash site. Had there been any U.S. Navy ships out there, the P-3 would have called and said, hey,
Okay, but I'm saying anybody on this NATO, if you're blaming it on this NATO ship, how come nobody on this NATO ship has come forward and say, hey, that was us, we goofed?
I can't answer why somebody else from another ship. See, but the thing was, the whole point is the plane was not shot down. Okay, the initial cause was when this AV hit the plane, went through it, and that accounts for all of this high-speed Mach 4 data primaries that other investigators have spoke about that come off this plane. But then when the plane continues to roll, now mind you, the recorders are still operating because the front of the plane is still attached. And all those cables run on the top section of the plane back to the tail. So there was no power cut yet. So it did record this rollover and inversion and turn to the point to where the left wing then broke off. But it was the ship to the east. Now, I don't know which ship it was to the east, by name, but it was one of those 4 that had fired off a missile, and then the other one fired off a missile, which was supposed to hit this AV. So those missile detonations were after the impact, which started the plane to break up and roll off, to the south. Other aircraft witnesses say we saw the plane roll off to the south. There was no zoom, climb, and turn to the north like the NTSB and CIA cartoons show. So this thing went, straight down in one fall corridor. And I even have some of the radar primaries on that, which show a portion of where the wing is coming off on a radar primary, and then how the rest of the plane is in this fall corridor, as I call it.
Okay, my last question was going to ask about this map that you sent me. And there's first of all, who created this map?
Okay, that map there is a copy that you can get off the internet. That's aeronautical maps. You can get maps that pilots can use.
Right.
Now, I used that map, and then what I did was I put it on a paint program, and then I put those lines in there to illustrate for you, to show 16 nautical miles from Mauritius Inlet to the actual crash site.
Right.
And then the 180-degree magnetic showing the helicopter flying out to the actual crash site. And then depicting that there was one NATO ship to the east and then one to the south. That was just kind of give you a kind of a way to look at this as I'm speaking.
And these circular radius indications, what's the significance of those things on there? What was the purpose of those things being on? I guess before you started making your notations on it, correct?
Yeah, those are compass roses that are used for VOR stations and stuff. Like you have the Hampton, and then you have it'll have like off JFK.
Yeah.
It's just a 180 degree. Some of them will be in true, but most of them are in magnetic. So it's kind of showing you the magnetic headings. And these are the charts that pilots use, and that's the best way to show a graph to show this, because it shows the boundaries and it shows the warning area boundaries and stuff like this. So that's a good map you can use to. I can put those illustrations on to show the actual crash location, and then showing the track that the Air National Guard helicopter took out when he said on the radio, yeah, we have them at 15 miles heading out. And they said when they were getting close, they said they had to kind of throttle back because of all this debris raining down, and they didn't want to foul their rotors. So
that's interesting. Now, okay, so now you said you wanted to have like a closing statement here to sum up all your theory.
Right. Okay. I wrote on this. I needed to write this out, so I'm confessing I'm reading this, but this is just to kind of, put the cherry on this thing here about how we know that this NATO thing also fits in. Okay, now this is the final chapter here, Ed. This is where I would be able to tie this thing together with a statement made by the United States National Security Agency, or NSA. So when Lahr was submitting his nearly 145 FOIA requests, the CIA was in that list and was being asked for the data they used in coming up with their ridiculous Zoom climb theory, and then also for how they put together their video cartoon. The CIA told Lahr that they got all the data from the NTSB, so ask them. So Ray did ask them, and the NTSB said that they got their information from the CIA, so back to the CIA. But the CIA said that the data was proprietary to Boeing regarding the Zoom climb stuff, and that was given to the NTSB. So the entire thing was a round robin. The CIA would, though, be required to release certain crash records they produced in all of this. But that was a disaster. First with the numbering issues, then duplicates that didn't make no sense, incomplete information, and trying to cite every FOIA exemption they could to not produce anything. So the CIA would have the idea to drag the NSA into this thing. But let me tell you, at that point, during Ray's litigation, the government was not aware that someone already secured FOIA docs consisting of congressional letters and other docs about crash inquiries. Now, in the packet I received, there is a conversation between the NTSB and the CIA on how they both work together on each other's videos. The NTSB says, no, it was separate. Well, that's not true. I got congressional proof. They worked on this thing together, Ed. Well, so much for the CIA's pushing this off onto the NTSB and vice versa. I have copies of those congressional letters to Lahr to use in his lawsuit. I gave him copies of those. So when push came to shove about the CIA's animation and its production, the CIA thought they had a bright idea, though they were not aware that anyone would have dug in so deep and actually got copies showing that the CIA and NTSB were working together on their videos, or I should say, where they were conspiring together to defraud the families of those dear people who lost their lives. So when it looked as if the judge was going to require the CIA to cough up Lahr's requests about their computer animation programs, this would be based on the fact that the topic of their animations was brought up 32 times in a court doc. I went through that court doc, and 32 times they mentioned the animations. This is how important it was even to the government. Okay, however, the bright idea that the CIA came up with was when they said, oh, we use an NSA computer system. Therefore, under the NSA Act, anything from the NSA is exempt. However, during letter exchanges with the CIA, NSA, and the judge and the government counsel, Lahr was still challenging the CIA's claim for nondisclosure, even though they were now claiming use of an NSA computer program. However, largely unlikely based on the FOIA letters that I had sent Ray, clearly indicating that the CIA and NTSB worked together, and that in all of their document exchanges, the NSA is not once listed as a participant in this investigation, nor having used any secret NSA computer program or having any part to do with this aircraft animation. Perhaps those letters I sent to Lahr were under review, perhaps. But what the judge required was a note under seal about any NSA computers. In all of this, where the defense was attempting to use the National Security Act of 1949 and thus asserting that Lahr had no chance here. But the same instructions were that the NSA was not required to disclose anything of a national security interest or any functions or operations of the NSA. But ironically, Ed, a portion of such was released and is in the court documents. That on the evening of the crash, that the National Security Agency was, in fact, monitoring TWA at that time and using a system for monitoring foreign weapons testing. Ding, ding, ding. You can't unring that bell, Ed. Though their reply did not release any alleged computer programs by name, but that they merely claimed that they used an NSA computer program, therefore made them automatically exempt, or so they thought. Of course, they added that the release of such would highly compromise U.S. security. Really? Their cartoon would compromise our security? This is stuff you can't make up, Ed. In the first place, they were not even required to discuss any function of the NSA. Well, it's too late for that. They can't unring that bell. As well, the CIA and the NSA committed a list of felonies, in my opinion, regardless of any security acts of 1949, when they volunteered that information, they never had to mention in the first place, and in doing so, I think they willingly committed fraud in doing so. Hereby, the CIA invoking NSA activities by claiming that they, the CIA, used their computer was just to avoid responding to the court. And now we finally know that there is a prohibition on the CIA operating domestically because of concerns about potential political abuse and the need to maintain a clear distinction between intelligence gathering and law enforcement. The NSA was focused on intelligence gathering, but was not involved in the TWA crash investigation. I have those court documents in the NSA's own words that they did monitor foreign weapons testings that night. So that pretty much covers what we can cover here on the radio, Ed. And
Wait,
that
the
was
NSA admits that they were monitoring. They would be monitoring communications.
They were monitoring whatever was going on with that whole event out there. Because we're talking about their cartoon, and they were trying to avoid anything. So to do so, they would say, "Well, we're using an NSA computer," but right here, one more thing here.
And one more thing, too. Now, the CIA would be involved in this at all because they're investigating foreign ships out there shooting missiles. Would that be the CIA investigating that?
Well, see,
wouldn't that be like naval intelligence?
The CIA, right. Well, the CIA doesn't have. They're not allowed to be in any domestic issues like that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Why are they involved?
Just to help cover this thing up, you know. But on that, on these other congressional documents it has right here, there's a statement about where the CIA and NSA, and you ask them today, they'll say, no, we were separate videos. But here's documented. I'm reading from the document. The NTSB reviewed the video. This was the CIA's video when it was in its late stages of production. More than 40 minor changes recommended by the NTSB were incorporated into the video. NTSB managers and senior technical personnel reviewed the final version and concurred in its release. This video was aired during the FBI news conference on November 18th, 1987. And then on the bottom it says CIA and NTSB analysts consulted at length, together concerning different maximum altitudes. All agreed that the issue was not significant. So it shows that the NTSB and CIA were both involved in this thing, and the whole thing's a mess.
Yeah, that's always good. You took the words right out of my mouth, because I can't imagine why CIA or NSA. NSA monitors communications. I'm not aware of them having any video production facilities, but I guess.
Well,
yeah.
But this is part of the lawsuit because the CIA was telling Lahr about NSA stuff. So Lahr and the attorney said, well, let's yank the NSA into this. They opened that door, Ed. The CIA opened that door. So when they started getting information, this note under seal to the judge was supposed to give in general terms, but they didn't have to say anything about anything that they did. But they thought, well, we have to. They just blundered this. So they said, yeah, we were out there and we were doing foreign weapons testing, checking that night. And when you look at that with the 4 foreign ships, the 4 radar tracks, the name of the 4 NATO ships that were targeting this AV, the AV's on radar. The manager at the FAA wrote a letter, an affidavit that he gave for Ray Lahr to prove that there was a missile, that AV was on radar. But then you had Bernard Loeb. He wrote Dave Thomas of the FAA, and he said, hey, look, how about if you just kind of forget this radar stuff? We don't want to start confusing people, Well, what he was trying to say was, can you help cover this up?
Yeah.
Well, Dave Thomas wrote back, and I got the letter. He says, well, I'm sorry. I understand you want to allay concerns. He says, but I can't comply with your request. To do so would be irresponsible. He said, we saw an unusual event, and I had to report it. And that was right. The FAA there did their job.
Aaron Sheets, I wish you luck on this, man. This is not the kind of thing you want to become obsessed with, man. There's just too much crap here with all this stuff.
I know, like I'm saying.
Yeah, I know,
when
man.
When I go back to it, it's so complex.
Yeah.
It really is. It's way more than the average person can kind of wrap their head around, and like I said, I could talk another 3 hours. But
we'll lose our voices. But the thing is, you can follow Aaron Sheets on Facebook, TWA Flight 800 Solved, and we're gonna have all these maps and stuff like that in the video. It'll be in the Patreon, so you can follow along that way somehow. Otherwise, it's really tough. Otherwise, YouTube is Rob Sheff. SHEF, and I'm going to be replaying the repeat from the first episode we did with Aaron Sheets, and then also to the ones we did with Cashel and Clark too as well. Clark, we talk about a lot of stuff, not just TWA, but the Cashel interview was just TWA, although I had him on too about Zimmerman and stuff as well. Mr. Aaron Sheets, thank you so much, man. I usually say if something new comes up, get back to me, but I think I've heard enough about it. TWA and I just don't last your whole lifetime. I don't think we're ever going to get a specific answer to this. But if something does come up, you have a home here to broadcast from. Okay, my friend?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Good night.
Okay, bye-bye. All right.